Welcome back, Commanders. My name is Alchrist, and today I'll be briefing you on your brand new T-Doll, the Sadistic Doctor, Florence. Florence is a pistol whipping, very passionate medical T-Doll. She deals hydro damage and works mainly as a sustain and really good at removing debuffs. However, her real side actually consumes allies' HP to boost their damage, and charming enemies towards her. She has a big bear companion by her side named Arius who assists her. I will mention that in all my guides, I'll be referring to Confectant's index as skill points, since this is much easier to understand. Florence's skill point generation mechanic is tied to her ultimate, Masochistic Hallucination, which actually has no cost or cooldown. She attacks in one direction from her position, hitting an area that is 3 tiles wide and 5 tiles long, and all enemies caught in that area will gain 2 debuffs. Chaos Compound, which increases incoming hydro damage by 10%, and also deals a small amount of AoE damage at the end of their turns to all enemies within 5 tiles. And by enemies, it means actually damages your own T-Dolls. This is important for a bear's ability, which we'll talk about later. The second debuff is Infatuated, which forces enemies to fall under Florence's allure and walk towards her. On top of the debuffs, she will deal AoE hydro damage to all the enemies hit, equal to 80% of her attack, and reducing their stability by 3. She will then gain 6 skill points, and then she will call or resummon her bear Arius to her side. Arius also does his fair share. He will follow Florence around like a puppy, and if Florence takes damage, he will absorb all of it. He will then counter-attack up to twice each turn to any attacks that damage him or Florence. And each time he takes damage, he will gain a stack of Mark of Shame. Upon reaching 5 stacks, he will then gain Tremor of Despair, which doubles all of his attack multipliers, as well as dealing 10% more damage to enemies who are infatuated. I guess he's the jealous type. He will move after Florence, and will attack the closest enemies to Florence within 6 tiles. He will deal hydro damage equal to 80% of his attack, and reducing their stability by 4. He will also apply Chaos Compound, and then taunt the target. Florence's passive is Surgical Preparation, in which she will summon Arius at the start of battle. In order to maintain Arius onto the field, she will lose 3 skill points at the start of each player turn. Otherwise, he will disappear. Her passive also removes any taunts, fears, infatuated and stuns he may have before his turn. Florence's basic attack is Forced Injection. It has a range of 6 and deals physical damage to 80% of her attack and reducing 2 stability. Florence's active skill 1 is Special Care, which also has no cost or cooldown. She can target a tile within 6 tiles and will heal all allies within a 2 tile AoE equal to 120% of her attack, while also cleansing 2 debuffs. Florence's active skill 2 is Pleasure Trigger, which again has no cost or cooldown. She selects one ally within 6 tiles and cleanses any taunts and fears while also applying Stimulant for 1 round. This will consume 20% of the max HP, and while they have this buff, they'll lose another 20% of their HP when they attack, but they will deal increased damage based on how much HP that was lost. The damage bonus can go up to 10%, and another 10% if it's Hydro damage. To put simply, a Hydro character can get a 20% increased damage boost by sacrificing 40% of their HP. 20% is lost from the application, and another 20% from the buff. Something worth pointing out is that Stimulant won't ever bring their HP below 1, so they won't accidentally die from it, but they won't get any damage increase if their HP is too low. When deploying Florence onto the field, the key element to playing her is keeping a buddy bear alive and soaking up and deal damage, while also sapping the HP of your main DPS so that they can deal more damage. Try and put Florence in enemy attack ranges so that Arius can take damage and get Tremor of Despair as soon as possible to increase his damage. It's best to have both her and Arius within range of enemies that you have applied Chaos Compound to, as the debuff you applied will damage your own T-Dolls. Since Arius absorbs Florence's damage, it counts as 2 instances of damage, thus gaining 2 stacks. You can get him to a full 5 stacks in 1 turn if multiple enemies have Chaos Compound, or he just gets attacked a lot. Another thing to note is that if Arius leaves the field, he will not return with his buffs when he is resummoned and will need to restack it. When it comes to a basic rotation, on turn 1, use active skill 2 on your Hydro DPS. On turn 2, use ultimate to refresh your skill points to maintain Arius. And then this loop repeats. Use active skill 1 whenever you need to recover HP. Ideally on turns you would use active skill 2. If you don't use ultimate every second turn, Arius will disappear the following turn. On to her pros and cons. Since none of her kit requires skill points or has a cooldown, you can actively use any of her abilities as you need them. Thanks to Arius, he is really good at soaking up damage. He can be used as an extra body, and if he does get taken out, he can be easily resummoned the following turn. On top of that, she can taunt and infatuate enemies to circumvent even more damage. Chaos Compound is basically a permanent 10% increase to all Hydro damage, on top of her Stimulant damage up buff. And to increase that damage further, she has a fixed key that applies defense downs, which has been sorely lacking in Hydro teams. And finally, she has easy access to cleanse 2 debuffs to a group of allies. As for her cons, Taunt and Infatuated don't work on bosses. Since Stimulant can only last 1 round, and since she can't really use it every turn, there will be downtime on a damage buff. And then she will need to eventually heal up the damage she consumes from her allies, further delaying her active skill 2, encouraging you to run a second sustained T-Doll. And using Stimulant on an ally like Tololo, who acts multiple times a turn, will basically drain all of her HP in 1 turn, putting her at risk of dying. Florence's best weapon is a signature, the Yasuo. It has attack boost, and its trait cleanses a debuff when she uses an action, granting a buff if it does. Its effect is Rule of Taboo, which increases the damage for all allied summons on the field. This also buffs allies' Hydro damage by 10%, and another further 10% if it's a counter attack. Alternately, you can use the Hestia. It grants crit damage, and its trait increases stability damage by 1 to all enemies within 3 tiles of her. Its effect will increase her damage when attacking an enemy within 3 tiles. You can also use the Papa Figo. It has attack boost, and its effect will increase her healing and damage if she is at full HP, which she should be if Arias has been absorbing all of her damage. Otherwise, you can use her namesake, the Pistolet 15. It has the same debuff cleanse trait as the Yasuo, and its effect Heart of Service will increase Arias' damage while also increasing her Hydro damage. Her attachments follows the DPS archetype, focusing first on attack percent, attack, crit rate, and then crit damage. Reminder that the only attachment that can have the crit damage is the muzzle. When it comes to which attachment sets to farm, her best set is the Hydro Boost set, increasing her Hydro damage by 20%. Otherwise, you can use the Face Track set, increasing damage by 15% if the target has any elemental debuffs. When it comes to her fixed keys, the best ones to obtain is 201 Fatal Thrill, starting off at max skill points so that Arya stays on the field for an extra turn at the start. 401 Sensitivity Boost. After Florence or Arias attacks, they will apply a defense down to the target. And 403 Riposte Reward. After Arias counterattacks, he will gain an attack up. Fixed key 601 Bondage Urge is interesting for mobbing content. Her ult can now pull enemies towards her and clamp them up for an easy AoE attack. Fixed keys 203 and 603 are situational and are not recommended for a core build. Her common key is Master's Command, increasing Arias' attack by 7%. There aren't any other T-Doll common keys that stand out for Florence, so feel free to use any key that increases attack or crit values. Next, we'll have a quick look at the Fortifications. At V1, maintaining Arias costs 1 less skill point per turn, and he now counters up to 4 times a turn. This is already a really good breakpoint for Florence, as this lets her delay her ultimate to every 3 turns, allowing her to be more flexible when maintaining active skill 2 and using active skill 1 when needed. At V2, the Chaos Compound is enhanced. Hydro damage taken is now increased by 15%, and the small AoE damage around them now triggers twice their turn, once at the start and once again at the end. At V3, the Stimulant buff now lasts 2 turns, and will now recover some of their HP based on Florence's attack when they drop below 30%. This is another great breakpoint for Florence, as it fixes her cons of keeping uptime on a buff, and can now spend turns either buffing 2 allies or alternating between buffing and healing. At V4, her ultimate's damage multiplier is now equal to 100% of her attack, while also healing Arios and giving him adrenaline for 1 turn. This will increase his attack by 10% and his defense by 15%. At V5, active skill 2 now removes infatuated and stuns from the ally targeted, while also granting Arios all the benefits of this skill. And at V6, Arios becomes unleashed. He now takes 30% less damage, and Tremor of Despair increases his attack by 35%. The damage multiplier of his counterattacks is now doubled, while also healing 30% of the damage he deals. To finish off, we'll have a quick look at suitable teammates to field along Florence. Her best pairing is Tololo. Even though Florence can sap away all of her HP in 1 turn, Tololo does benefit the full damage buff on all of her attacks. And if you have Springfield, that weakness falls off, as Springfield would naturally recover the HP lost. Another Hydro T-Doll is Nikita. Something worth noting though is that Stimulant won't carry over to counter attacks between turns. If you don't have Springfield, you can use Ksenia to heal and buff the ally with Stimulant, or you can even use Colfin if you need all Hydro T-Dolls. Here are some examples of team compositions. And that about wraps up this character briefing for Florence. I hope this guide helps, and if you have any other suggestions on a build or teammates, make sure to leave a comment below. Until next time, Commanders.